I have had the great honor of working with the Green Alliance in the past, and I wish to compliment the Green Alliance and the CBI for taking such a leadership role in trying to bring people together across partisan divides and elevate the significance of this climate crisis that is now threatening the future of human civilization. There is, however, along with the threat it poses, a fantastic set of opportunities. So it's not at all an accident that leaders in the business community are focused on the opportunities and indeed unleashing the creative energy of investors, inventors, entrepreneurs, and corporations that have the ability to take these new technologies that have such amazing promise and make them a reality, bring them to scale, sharply reduce carbon emissions, and actually open the door to a bright future in which the flourishing of humankind can once again resume. There really are only three questions regarding the climate crisis. The first one is, must we change? We've had a good run these last 150 years or so since the breakout of the Industrial Revolution really began to mature into a burgeoning civilization, and it has lowered poverty rates and lifted standards of living. And yes, it's a mixed story, but overall we have enjoyed many blessings. And since most of the raw power that fueled this rise of human civilization came from carbon-based energy, it's natural to ask, must we change? It looks like it might involve some effort to change. 85% of all our energy still on a global basis comes from carbon fuels. So do we really have to change? Well, the scientists have long told us that yes, the answer is incredibly clear. More than 150 years ago, not in this city, not far from this building, the great scientist John Tyndall first outlined why this was going to lead to a day of reckoning. And then the international group of scientists that has done such amazing work has made it very clear, and every National and Royal Academy on the surface of the earth is unanimous in saying this is an urgent task. But leave all that aside. Now Mother Nature is telling us in unmistakably clear terms that we must change. Today, we will, around this world, put another 110 million tons of heat-trapping carbon pollution into the atmosphere, that thin shell of atmosphere that surrounds the planet, trapping much more of the heat energy that arrives from the sun and used to escape in just the right proportion to keep temperatures perfect for humanity and for the web of living species of which we're a part. And 110 million tons added every day has begun to mount up. And in a conservative estimate that's never been challenged at all, the scientists tell us that the cumulative amount of man-made global warming pollution that's in the atmosphere now traps enough extra heat energy every day to equal the heat energy that would be released by 400,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding every 24 hours. Now, it's a large planet, but that's a lot of energy, and it is disrupting the water cycle, raising temperatures, of course. Some 6,000 people died this summer on the Indian subcontinent and India and Pakistan from the higher temperatures alone. And the threat to crop yields from the higher temperatures alone is now rising to the top of concerns around the world. the movement of tropical diseases into temperate latitudes, the melting of the ice and the sea level rise that follows. But as I mentioned, it's also disrupting the water cycle. 90% of this extra heat goes into the oceans, and the evaporation off of the oceans that leads to precipitation over land, which then rushes back to the sea, of course, as we all learned long ago. That process is being put on steroids, if you will accept the analogy. It's being supercharged. And so England had its wettest winter in recorded history. Thousands of homes were underwater in part of this land for weeks at a time. Just today, the historic downpours in Iran are in the news. Every day, the television news is like a nature hike through the book of Revelation. And sometimes the commentators connect the dots. Most often, they do not. Not to be critical there, but just to refer to the fact that what is going on a global basis is historic. These downpours are unprecedented. The melting of the ice is unprecedented. And the drying out of the land by the same heat energy has rendered California, the largest of the U.S. states, 99% of California is in drought today. And all around the world, you see historic levels of drought. We are disrupting the natural balance. And these events, for example, Super Typhoon Haiyan, Pope Francis is in the U.S. today. Last year he was in the Philippines in the aftermath of the strongest ocean-based storm in history. 4 million refugees, some of them still not back in their homes. In my country, New York City was hit by Superstorm Sandy. My hometown of Nashville, thousands of my neighbors lost their homes and businesses, had no insurance because it was a once-in-a-thousand-year event, the statisticians tell us, even as they quickly revise the statistics to put new ones in place, because now the world is different. And just a few weeks ago, we saw the report that if we continue on this course, then over time, the sea level rise is predicted to be so astonishingly high that humanity, as essentially a coastal species, would have to retreat from many of the great cities of the earth. And some of this begins to sound like a science fiction story. Unfortunately, it is true. A week from today, I will be in Miami, Florida, where some of the streets flood just with high tides now. And their access to fresh water is threatened. And their sewage system is threatened, not to mention flood insurance. And cities around the world are already dealing with this. And yet there is this question, must we change? Yes, we must change. Now, the second question is, can we change? And here, the news is thrillingly optimistic, because the entrepreneurs, the scientists and engineers have succeeded in bringing down the cost of collecting electricity from sunlight to a level where it is now competitive in many regions of the world with electricity from burning these dirty fossil fuels. And just as with the famous Moore's Law that has brought these computer costs down so much and has led to these devices that most of us have, it is transforming the world. I'll give you a quick analogy. I remember when I was a young congressman, I was an early adopter of technologies. I got one of those first big clunky mobile telephones, and I thought it looked so cool. I couldn't wait to show my friends. And around that time, and around 1980, the largest telephone company in the U.S., AT&T, commissioned McKinsey to do a global survey. How many of these things could we possibly sell by the year 2000? And so they did the extensive work and reported back 900,000. And when the year 2000 came around, sure enough, they sold 900,000 in the first 3 days of that year. And now there are billions, 7.5 billion of these mobile phones. Another 1.2 billion will be sold this year. Why were they not only wrong, but badly wrong? Not even close. Well, I think there were several reasons. One is they did not fully take into account that the kind of change that we grow used to in our lives, slow and steady, tomorrow is unlikely to be very different from today, as today was not so different from yesterday. That kind of change is not the kind of change that comes with these technological revolutions. Because when the scientists and engineers find a way to use their ingenuity to unlock these fantastic possibilities, the cost comes down dramatically, even as the quality goes up dramatically. They didn't count on that when they projected only 900,000 phones would be sold in the year 2000. They didn't count on the fact that the majority of the people in the world lived in regions that did not have the old landline technology grid. And so they were eager to leapfrog that old technology and take advantage of the new one. They didn't count on the fact that here the choice was in the hands of individuals, not parastatals or government bureaucracies or large corporations in a monopoly utility type position. And so that revolution has taken off incredibly. Solar cells, photovoltaic solar cells, are exactly the same. The fastest deploying country in the world is Bangladesh. We're seeing now a meteoric rise in the spread of this energy. And by the way, there is a big difference when the cost goes below the cost of the incumbent. In the business world, turns out I've discovered that when a new technology challenges an old one, there seems to be a difference between it being more expensive than the incumbent technology and being cheaper than the incumbent technology. Not just a difference of a minor scale. It's like the difference between 0 degrees and 1 degree. That's more than 1 degree. It's the difference between ice and water. And in markets, the difference between more expensive than and cheaper than is the difference between markets that are frozen up with capital withheld from investment and markets where capital is liquid and there is a flood of new innovation and investment and a tidal wave of change. That is what is happening. We have the possibility. So the answer to that question is yes, we can change. These new sources of energy, you could say, are literally heaven sent. Enough energy arrives to the earth from the sun every hour to equal the full amount of energy used by the entire world economy for an entire year. And so as we learn to harvest a slightly larger fraction of that energy at a cost that is affordable and now not only competitive but beating the incumbent sources, then the answer to the question is, can we change, is clearly yes. Now the final question. And really, it's the reason that I came here today. The third question, must we change? Yes. Can we change? Yes. The third question is, will we change? Paris, at the beginning of December, is the host of this global meeting. And the countries around the world that have been looked to for leadership are trying to corral the others, once again, to come to a successful global plan. This time it will succeed. The great American poet in the 20th century, Wallace Stevens, once wrote the line, "After the last no comes a yes, and on that yes the future world depends." The abolition movement, which began here in the United Kingdom, faced a lot of no's before the last no was followed by a yes. Every great moral cause that this world has seen encountered no after no after no, until the question was ultimately resolved into a binary choice between what is right and what is wrong. And once that resolution occurs, the outcome is foreordained. But will the United Kingdom change? Will the United Kingdom provide the leadership that its friends around the world have so long admired? There are very few of those great moral questions that we have encountered in the past, from abolition to women's suffrage to civil rights and to gay and lesbian rights. There are very few of these questions where the United Kingdom has not been heard loudly and clearly. This is such a question because it involves the survival of humankind. It involves the question that our children will ask us not too long from now. If they live in circumstances where these dire consequences are worse, as the scientists and Mother Nature are now telling us they will be, they would ask us, why didn't you act? But if we unleash the power of business and industry and science and technology and go with this wave of change that is heaven sent, where we do solve this problem, then they will ask, how did you find the moral courage to rise up and change? I try never to interfere in the politics of another nation, and I don't intend to start that today. Indeed, the last time I joined with the Green Alliance was to applaud the statement that this group elicited from all three of the major political parties during your last campaign season to stand in unity in favor of solving this question. But as a friend of the United Kingdom, I must tell you in all candor, I am puzzled. Because since that statement was made, and since the election was held, this country's commitment to zero-carbon homes has been canceled. This country's commitment to zero-carbon buildings has been canceled. The Green Deal has been canceled. The climate change levy exemption for zero-carbon energy has been canceled. Solar support via the renewables obligation has been canceled. Onshore wind support via the renewable obligation has been canceled. The renewable obligation and contracts for difference, gone. Public ownership of the Green Investment Bank has been privatized, or the announcement has been made. The differential vehicle excise duty has been weakened. The prevention of fracking in carefully protected areas has been reversed. Feed-in tariffs reduced by 87%. I'm puzzled. I'm puzzled. I say this without any partisanship whatsoever. Truly, believe me, I have been partisan in my country. I have never dared to express a partisan view in this country. I have refrained, as I should. I'm not a citizen of your country, but too much is at stake. And I was personally invited by your Prime Minister before he was Prime Minister to come and meet all of the ministers of Parliament in his party. And I heard pledges and commitments that really inspired me. And I was grateful and encouraged and hopeful. And I've heard some speeches since then that have reawakened a kindling of that same hope. I know that there will be a speech next week. Words. Words. What about actions? The actions that have been taken here in the last few months are puzzling to me. I'm a student of politics. I hear whispers from number 10 that remind me of palace intrigue of some sort. Who is the leader? Who makes these decisions? I'm comforted by mutual friends of your Prime Minister that he personally still believes very strongly in this, and that he somehow does not really have the ability to take control of these decisions. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And he hasn't said that, of course. But what is the answer to the puzzle that I'm describing to you? There is a way to answer it. Between now and the Paris meeting, recognizing what the business community here is saying and what the Green Alliance is saying, those who really understand that we must change, we can change, will decide that we will change. I'll conclude with this comment. When the United Kingdom has offered leadership, the world has moved. The United States, which has also been through a similar period where there were reversals, now has very strong leadership from the White House. And the United States has engineered an agreement with China, where the two largest polluters in the world are moving in a very bold and impressive way. Will the United Kingdom do the right thing? The answer to that may well be in the hands of the men and women in this room. But when that question comes from the next generation, we want to be able to say that we did do the right thing. We can change. And if we decide that we have the political will, we will change. And always remember that political will is itself a renewable resource. Thank you very much.